Hi, I'm Gary Burghoff. I'm going to be your guide on an expedition. We'll journey through exciting and exotic territory. Might even run into lions, or elephants, or even a dinosaur. We'll explore oceans full of sharks, crustaceans, and beautiful fish, and a world of trees, birds, and flowers. We may go somewhere romantic like Paris, or even farther afield to Fiji, Rio, or Kathmandu, all at much less than the price of an airplane ticket, and we'll see history from the very beginning to the birth of America to the moon. How will we make our journey? Through philately. No, don't worry, it's not dangerous. It means stamp collecting. Lots of people get it confused with numismatics, which is coin collecting, and a few people get it mixed up with Phil Appleby. He's an accountant. So fill up your canteen, lace your boots, and get ready for an adventure. We won't be alone, you know. Stamp collecting is the world's most popular hobby. Millions of people in every country of the world collect stamps, from world leaders and kings to ordinary people like me and you. Oh, and don't forget, we might find treasure. For lurking among the thousands of stamps are some really elusive ones that are worth hundreds, thousands, even $1 million. And all stamps have some value which will remain and possibly grow over the years. Now, to hunt stamps, we must know our prey, and we need the answer to a very basic question. What is a stamp? Well, that's not as easy a question as it may seem. This is a gallery of stamps, and this one right here is my very favorite. You know why? Because it can be anything I want it to be. This, for example, looks like a stamp, but it isn't. It's an artist's own creation. A stamp? No, that's an Easter seal. They're not stamps. As far as we're concerned, this one isn't either. This is a supermarket trading stamp. I mean, people do collect them, some to get all the different types, some to get a toaster, or even a record player. What is this? Looks like a record. Sounds like a record. Sort of. It is a record, but it's also a stamp. It's from Bhutan in the Himalayas, and it plays their national anthem. It's a little hard to get on a postcard, though. This tiny one is a stamp, and this great big one, and this aluminum foil one, and of course, this one. So, what do all these real stamps have in common that makes them stamps? Well, to answer that, let's take a look at this one. This is the penny black, the very first postage stamp. It was issued in London, England in 1840. Like the other genuine stamps, it was issued by a recognized government. It has a specific value, 1 penny, and of course, it was valid for postage, conveyance of a letter from one place to another. That's all it takes to be a stamp. The penny black is an uncommon stamp today, but when it came out, it was so common that at least one person wallpapered a room with them. I'm not so sure I'd want to see that much of Queen Victoria. These first stamps with their uniform rates and low cost were a big hit. Before them, there was mail service, but instead of the sender paying, the person who got the letter had to pay. The rate was based on the distance the letter traveled, so a letter from far away could be very expensive. Frequently, people would refuse to pay the postage, and the mail would be destroyed. I mean, after all, if it wasn't expected, how could they know what was in the envelope? And who wants to pay for junk mail? Well, with prepaid postage by stamps, junk mail is free. That's kind of a mixed blessing, isn't it? In 1847, the United States issued its first stamps with values of 5 and 10 cents. The 5-cent stamp was good for letters traveling up to 300 miles. Beyond that, it cost 10 cents. Over the next few years, many other countries issued their first stamps, including a lot of countries that don't even exist anymore. And that's one of the fun things about stamp collecting. You know, finding an old stamp from Moldavia, Schleswig-Holstein, or Punch. Today, almost 200 countries issue stamps. This gives the collector a huge range of stamps to collect, and learning about them will give you a real advantage at Trivial Pursuit. So you can start to see the wonderful variety and beauty of stamps, and stamps are issued every day with topics as current as the headlines. With stamps, there's always something new and always something exciting to find. And all this leads to another question. How do you collect stamps? Well, just as there are all kinds of collectors, there are all kinds of collections. The best advice for the beginner is to collect any stamp you can get your hands on. You see, this way you can learn about the different kinds of stamps from around the world and see which of them interest you the most. But after a while, I'm going to bet you're going to want to specialize. With so many different stamps existing, you couldn't hope to get a very high percentage of all the issues, so it's much easier to narrow your scope. Well, there are many ways to specialize. For example, you could limit your collection to U.S. stamps, or you could narrow it down even more. How about U.S. stamps from the Civil War era? Or you can pick another country that interests you. Japan, for example. Another way to go is called topical collecting. These collections are built around a theme which could be, well, almost anything. Some topics are historical. The spread of communism. Or World War II. Black history. Some topics are less serious. Birds. Boats. Or baseball. Advanced collectors might specialize in a particular kind of stamp, such as airmail stamps like I do, or early provisional stamps. Or they might build a specialized or reference collection. That's a complete study of a particular variation or variety. For instance, one stamp may look the same as another, but not be the same due to different perforations, design, paper, color, or watermark variations. These reference collections can be very difficult and expensive to put together, and you really have to know how to verify very subtle differences, or know a good dealer who does. Other collectors favor blocks. A block is 4 or more attached stamps. Plate blocks have the number of the plate used to print them on what's called the selvage. That's the border of the sheet. Older issues had the plate number in the middle, and their plate blocks have 6 stamps. In the late 1930s, with the introduction of the rotary press, the plate number moved to the corner, and plate blocks of 4 became the norm. Other things show up in the salvage. Israeli stamps have decorative tabs. Sometimes public service messages appear. Some collectors even specialize in Mr. Zips. Sometimes stamps are printed on souvenir sheets. These are mainly issued for stamp collectors, and in the U.S. they're often tied in with a major stamp show. They give the stamp designers a chance to cut loose, and some of the results are beautiful. Postal stationery is another category, with a wide range of envelopes, postcards, and mailgrams. The first postal stationery was issued at the same time as the penny black in 1840. It wasn't accepted like the stamps were, and it was withdrawn. Covers are envelopes with stamps on them, and there's quite a variety of them. On covers, the stamps are canceled, that is, they have a postmark. Over the years, many different kinds of postmarks have been devised, and some collectors specialize in them. Early or unusual postmarks can be valuable. Many of the stamps that you will get will be canceled, and you never know when you might turn up a rare postmark. Postal history collectors go for stampless covers. These predate stamps with hand stamps on them to show the amount of postage paid. The most common covers are first-day covers. The Postal Service selects a specific post office to issue each new stamp, usually in a place connected with the stamp's subject. First-day covers have a special postmark showing that they were canceled there on the first day of release. Frequently, collectors use special envelopes for first-day covers with a design called a cachet on the left side of the envelope. The U.S. Post Office makes arrangements with collectors for first-day covers. You furnish the envelope, addressed to yourself or anyone you choose, money to pay for the stamp, and the post office takes it from there. Some covers find their way out of personal collections and into the marketplace. They're interesting because of where they've been and who sent them. Some of the most interesting covers commemorate special events often connected with aviation, such as the opening of an airport or an historical flight or voyage. Perhaps they were carried on a Zeppelin, that's an early form of blimp, or they were on an atomic bomb test flight. In addition to covers, stamps themselves, especially airmails, present a history of aviation from the Wright brothers to the Concorde. Whatever type of collection you decide on, you'll need one vital ingredient: stamps. One of the first things to do is to ask your friends and relatives if they have any interesting stamps. Many people have some foreign stamps or some unusual U.S. issues that they've put aside without really having a collection. Or you can also ask for stamps at businesses like banks and newspapers that have correspondence with foreign countries. Now let's suppose that you've asked around and your Aunt Millie sent you some goodies. Hey, what do we do now, huh? Well, first of all, you should thank Aunt Millie, and then let's take a look at what you've got. Some interesting things in here. Yeah, well, first of all, we can throw this away. It's a bus pass. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to separate all of the stamps on envelopes from all of the stamps that aren't. Okay, now, these are the stamps on envelopes, or covers as they're called. So let's take a look through them. Well, what do you know? Here's a letter my Uncle Benny sent my Aunt Millie while he was in the Army in Korea. I can relate to that. Oh, it has a military postmark on it, see? Well, now that's a collectible, so we're going to leave that one just the way it is. Dear Mildred, all right, now, the rest of the covers don't seem to be very interesting, so I'll tell you what. We're going to perform a little magic here. We're actually going to remove these stamps from the paper without damaging them. To perform this feat of prestidigitation, we have to prepare the stamps by cutting them off of the envelope. Of course, we leave a little bit of paper around the stamp in order to protect it. Next, we need a shallow basin of warm water. That's warm, not hot. If you use really hot water, you can damage your stamps. We take the stamp and we place it in the water. After a bit, the warm water will loosen the glue and the stamp will separate from the paper. Using tongs, move the stamp to a flat paper towel or newspaper. A flat paper towel. And then we cover it with another layer. When we have placed all of the stamps on the towel, we put a weight on top of the towels or newspaper and leave it overnight. A heavy dictionary makes a good weight. That's all there is to it. Now all of our stamps are off the paper and have dried flat. I mentioned tongs. These are one thing you're really going to need. It's kind of like baseball. If you want to be a serious player, you're going to need a glove. It's the same thing with tongs and stamps. Without tongs, it's very hard to handle your stamps without damaging them. If a stamp is on the table, for example, your fingers have to bend it to pick it up. And that's a great way to damage the edges or even end up folding the stamp in half. But with tongs, you see, you can just slide an edge under the side of the stamp and pick it up without damaging it. Remember, though, that tongs are not tweezers. Tweezers have ridges on their pincers, which are fine for grabbing hairs or splinters, but not great for stamps. Tongs have flat surfaces, so they won't hurt stamps. You can get tongs at your local stamp dealer or by mail order. Now, as for our stamps, let's figure out what we have. Identifying a stamp is the same as hanging a name on some moke who's gotten too friendly with a bottle of Scotland's finest and is now getting to know the carpet. You want to know where he's from, what's his handle, what he's worth. It's ditto for stamps, sweetheart. If you get lucky, you'll find the guy's driver's license, or they'll have a file on him downtown. With stamps, you've got it nailed when you find the catalog listing or a space in your album. So let's check out some suspects. Thanks, Rick. Here's looking at you, kid. These are all U.S. stamps, and among all stamps there are two main subspecies, definitives and commemoratives. Definitives are the standard postage stamps issued in various values to cover all the possible needs of the postal system. These are the current U.S. definitives. You can see all the different values. Once in a while, a new value may be added, but otherwise definitives are usually issued for many years without changes. Commemoratives are just the opposite. They're issued for a short period of time to mark an occasion, to honor a person or group of people, or simply to provide variety for postal users and collectors. Both definitives and commemoratives can be issued in sets. That means a group of stamps issued at the same time or on the same subject. Recently, the United States has moved away from issuing sets, but there are many great foreign sets being issued. It's usually easy to tell the difference between commemoratives and definitives in U.S. stamps. Here's a hint. Commemoratives are usually larger than definitives. There are other types of stamps that you'll come across. Today, all stamps are perforated. You know, those little tiny holes that let you pull the stamps apart. Originally, stamps didn't have perforations, and you had to cut them apart. They are called imperforates. Coils are perforated on only two sides. Booklet panes are from the booklets that the post office sells. Overprints are regular stamps on which extra printing has been added. This is done because of military occupations or other special occurrences. Now, a category which you won't find among U.S. stamps is the semi-postal. These issues combine the postal rate with an extra charge which the post office collects and passes on to a charity or civic measure, which is sometimes identified on the stamp. There are many varieties of postage due, revenue, and official stamps from all parts of the world. Some people specialize in these kind of issues, and they can make an interesting collection. U.S. duck stamps, which hunters have to buy to show they've paid their annual license fee, date back to 1934, and the early ones can be quite valuable. They have become quite popular among the specialized collectors and have been outstanding performers as investments. Artists compete to design these stamps, and the results are beautiful. Aunt Millie didn't send any duck stamps, except this one. She did send some foreign stamps. Identifying them is going to be a little harder. See, not all of them have recognizable country names. I mean, Australia, Costa Rica, and Monaco are no problem. But what about Suomi, Helvetia, or Magyar Posta? Those are the names you would see on stamps from Finland, Switzerland, or Hungary. You see, some other countries have their own names for themselves, just as they have different names for us. We're Les États-Unis in French and Los Estados Unidos in Spanish. Don't worry, though. Most countries' names are pretty close to what we call them. And it's a good idea to have a world map handy. That way you can look for similar names and see exactly where the countries are. Here are some other tips. IRA is the Republic of Ireland. A name with Deutsches in it is from Germany. And the USSR comes out CCCP. There is one country that doesn't put its name on its stamps at all, and that's Great Britain. Since they claim the world's first stamp, they just put a picture of the Queen, either large or small, and leave it at that. Looking through our stamps, we find we have a mix. There's several definitives from France, a Spanish commemorative, and other stamps from around the world. Now we know enough about these stamps to get a positive ID on them.
This stamp says République Française, so it's from France. If we look in the Scott catalog in the section on France, we find a picture of the stamp. The listing confirms that the 50 centime stamp is rose-colored, so we know we found the right one. The catalog lists the other values in the set, such as 60 centimes in green. It also identifies other versions, such as booklet panes and coils, and gives information on perforations and watermarks. There's all the information needed to make an exact identification. The values are also listed, but more about values later. Let's see where this suspect is from. Posta Romana. Aha! That means Romania. It's a fairly large stamp, and it says Vlad Tepes, 500 Annie. The portrait on the stamp must be old Vlad, and Annie could be short for annual or anniversary. Looking through the Romanian section of the Scott catalog, we don't find a picture of this exact stamp, because not every stamp is pictured. But with our detective skills, we can still find it. Here's a stamp with a similar design. The Posta Romana on the bottom is identical. There's a 55B value listed, and that's what our stamp says. And it's described as green and multicolored, and that matches too. The description specifies Prince Vlad Tepes, and that nails it down. We've identified our subject.
Now, if we check the history books, we'd find that old Vlad Tepes was a Romanian king, and a fairly nasty one at that. He seemed to enjoy killing and torturing his subjects, and since his father's name was Dracul in Romanian, he was called Son of Dracul, or Dracula. He's actually the historical forerunner of the Dracula character. Now, this stamp is easy. It's from the United Nations. They're the only organization that's allowed to issue stamps. And since it's in English, we can see that it's a commemorative for the Decade of Women, issued in 1980. A stamp like this is not so easy. There's no English lettering, no other obvious clues. In a case like this, you'll have to search the catalog to discover that this is a stamp from the Philippines, issued during the Japanese occupation in World War II. This little number is from the U.S., and it's easy to figure it out. It's a commemorative for a great hobby, and the most popular in the U.S. It's stamp collecting. Perforations, or perfs for short, are like a person's fingerprints and can be used to make sure that you've got the right suspect. They frequently change when the printers switch machines or dies. Sometimes a stamp is common with one perf and rare and valuable with another. You measure these perforations with a perf gauge. Just lay the stamp on the gauge and find the row that lines up. This tells you how many perfs there are per 2 centimeters, about 8/10 of an inch. That's the standard. Now you can zero in on the specific variety you have. Watermarks are faint impressions in the paper. Since they leave the paper thinner, they let more light through. It's easy to see on a sheet of typing paper, but it's not so easy to see on a stamp. And in some cases, they make a big difference in the stamp's value. So to check a stamp's watermark, collectors use a dish and a special watermark fluid. This makes the watermark appear when the stamp is immersed. What is that? Well, I should have known. It's a butterfly. They appear on many stamps, and they make a good specialty collection. Take a look at these. We've gone through Aunt Millie's stamps, and now we have a stamp collection. We have to think about the care and feeding of our new collection. Well, the feeding is easy, simply adding stamps to your new collection. The care is a little harder, but not much. Essentially, all you have to do is to store your stamps and keep them dry and out of the sun. There are a number of options for storage. The most common is the good old stamp album. All sorts of albums are available. There are U.S., foreign, worldwide, and topical albums. Some albums illustrate the most common issues of their subjects, and some every one. Get an album that reflects what you expect to pursue for the next few years, and look for a sturdy binder in good quality paper so it will last. You can also get blank pages and create your own album. If your collection is based on an unusual topic, this is the best way to get a really attractive presentation. You can make your own groupings and captions. Once you have an album, you have to mount your stamps in it. The most important thing to remember here is no adhesive tape. It will damage your stamps and destroy their value. You can't get it off without ripping the stamp, and in time the sticky stuff will discolor and ruin it. Now, paste and glue are just as bad. No, you want to mount your stamp without damaging it, and leave yourself with the ability to remove the stamp later. The ideal way to solve this problem is something called a mount. They're kind of like tiny picture frames for your stamps, and they're really neat. Just insert the stamp and attach it to your album page. For the average collector, hinges are quicker, cheaper, and almost as good. But because hinges are applied directly to the gum on the back of the stamp, they are not recommended for older, rarer, more valuable unused stamps whose higher value is partially due to the condition of the original gum. On the other hand, for the more common stamps with little monetary value, the hinge is simple, economical, and reliable. Let me show you how they work. Most hinges come pre-folded. If yours aren't already, fold the hinge 1/3 of the way down, wet the small end lightly, and position it on the back of the stamp, towards the top with the fold up. I use my tongue to moisten the hinge, but you can't use my tongue, so use your own, or a bit of sponge. When the small part is attached to the stamp and dried a bit, moisten the large part and stick the stamp on your album page. Remember, use your tongs. Once a hinge is dried, the stamp can be lifted to inspect the back. The hinge can be removed with minimal damage to the stamp or gum. But be sure that the hinge has dried and be sure to remove it carefully. Another way to store your stamps is in stock books. You won't need mounts or hinges if you use stock books, but you won't have the same organization and captions as an album page either. As for feeding your collection, getting more stamps, there's lots of ways to go. An obvious place to get U.S. stamps is your local post office. You can keep up with the new commemoratives as they're issued and get variations such as plate blocks and postal stationery. The post office also operates special philatelic sales windows for collectors. In addition to the latest issues, they have a variety of special sets, albums, and services available. You can find them in major cities or order directly from the Philatelic Sales Division in Washington, D.C. If there's a stamp dealer nearby, pay a visit. There you'll see a variety of stamps from around the world. Prices will be marked, so you'll see the actual selling prices for stamps that interest you. Dealers carry albums, catalogs, and all sorts of supplies and equipment. If the dealer isn't too busy, he can also be a great source of information. You'll find many dealers and exhibits of great collections at stamp shows. They're hard to beat for getting an overview of the stamp world or seeing stamps offered at prices from a few cents to many thousands of dollars and meeting other collectors. Another great way to meet other collectors is through a stamp club. Many schools and organizations sponsor stamp clubs, and lots of towns and neighborhoods have them too. The U.S. Postal Service sponsors the Ben Franklin stamp clubs for young people, and these are perfect for beginning collectors. Auctions are an especially good source of better quality stamps. This is how the most valuable and special stamps are sold. You can go to an auction and bid for yourself, or you can bid by mail. Catalogs with pictures and descriptions are available before the sales, and the auction house will act as your agent if you mail them your bids. Approvals are a way of buying stamps that is unique to the hobby. Companies will send you selections of stamps. You choose the ones you want and return the rest with payment. You can get a general selection or specify the country, topic, or price range, and the company will tailor the approvals to match your needs. At any one time, millions of dollars of stamps are out on approval, and with hardly any exceptions, they're returned or paid for. That's a real testimonial to the classy bunch of people that collect stamps. Some companies sell stamps by mail order. They advertise in Sunday papers and in stamp magazines like Lynn's Stamp News and Stamps. These and others feature interesting stories and news about stamps and collecting. Some of the dealers issue lists of their stock and will also seek to fulfill your specific needs. Others sell packets or mixtures. These are pretty much what they sound like, mixed selections of stamps. They might be specified all U.S. or all foreign, all on paper or all off, or be a total grab bag. Sometimes they're even sold by the pound. Stamps from a mixture may cost you a fraction of a cent. Some other stamps are a different story. Most people, if asked to name the most valuable substance in the world, would probably say diamonds or rubies or a rare metal. But they would be wrong. A gram of diamonds is worth, well, a few $1,000s. The British Guiana 1 cent black on magenta of 1856, weighing less than a gram, sold for almost $1 million. Many other stamps are worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of the most valuable categories is errors. These are stamps which are incorrectly printed and still avoid the printer's reject bin. The most famous error is the upside-down airplane of 1918. This was the first airmail stamp issued by the U.S., and a lucky Mr. Roby bought a sheet of 100 of these at the post office for $24. This kind of error happens when the stamps are run through a press twice to print different parts of the design. On the Jenny, as this stamp is called, the border was printed first, then the image of the biplane added. If a sheet is reversed on its way through, the result is an inverted center. Today, a single copy of this error can sell for as much as $120,000, depending on condition. That's 500,000 times what Mr. Roby originally paid. Post offices don't like to see their mistakes reach the public. In 1962, some copies of a Dag Hammarskjöld commemorative with the yellow background inverted got past the postal authorities and were sold. The post office responded by printing thousands of copies of the mistake, so many, in fact, that the invert is more common than the correct version. Stamp collectors were upset by this, and now there are laws preventing deliberate errors. And errors do pop up, so keep your eyes open.
Recently, several employees of the CIA bought some stamps for work. When they looked at them, they discovered that the orange-colored design was inverted. They replaced the stamps at work, but the CIA claimed the inverts. The employees sold the stamps, the CIA charged them with theft, and while the issue is unsettled, the stamps have been resold for as much as $45,000 apiece.
True errors occur when a design is inverted, a color is missing, or perforations are missing. Other variations take place when the wrong paper or ink is used. Then there are cases where there's a mistake in the design of the stamp. In 1956, East Germany issued this tribute to the composer Robert Schumann. The only problem was the music in the background was by Schubert. And in 1967, the Cook Islands portrayed the lovely Walter Lily. Rare errors are among the most valuable of stamps. Most collectors will never own stamps this valuable, but all collectors are interested in the value of their collections. There are three keys to the value of a particular stamp: rarity, demand, and condition. The fewer of a particular stamp there are, the more valuable it is. In some cases, such as the British Guiana Magenta, there is only one copy in the world. Stamps that are common have only a small value. Even though many collectors want copies of the U.S. commemoratives, most are inexpensive because millions are printed. The demand part is important, though. Some stamps are relatively rare, but not tremendously valuable because they are not widely collected. The way to gauge the rarity and demand for a stamp is to check its catalog value. The most widely used catalogs are published in this country by Scott and in England by Stanley Gibbons. Covering either the entire world or specialized by country, they list all of the issues and their varieties and are very complete. The important thing to remember about catalog values is that they are a point of reference, not the actual buying or selling price. They show the relative worth based on quantity and demand. Now, you might be able to buy a stamp for more or less than its catalog value depending on whom you're dealing with. If you sell your stamps, you will almost always receive substantially less than catalog value. Another publication called the Brookman Price List is different. It contains market prices. This shows you what specific U.S., UN, and Canadian issues sell for on today's market. The other big question in determining a stamp's value is its condition. Whether a stamp is used and shows a cancellation is the first consideration. In the U.S., unused stamps are almost always more valuable. There are a few cases where a stamp is more rare in canceled form because it was recalled from service, for example, or because it has an unusual cancellation. Judging a stamp's condition is a rare art. You have to note the slightest flaws. The very best stamps are graded superb. These are beautiful specimens, as fresh as when they left the press, with a well-centered image. Extra fine grade stamps might be a hair less centered or fresh-looking. Very fine stamps are slightly more off-center. Fine is where the perfs just clear the image, and in average stamps, the perforations touch or intrude into the image. In all these grades, the condition of the gum, whether it's been hinged or not, the brightness of the ink, and any other variable in the stamp's quality will affect the grade and the price. To give you an example, one inverted biplane recently sold for over $100,000 in extra fine condition, but an example in fine condition brought only $70,000. Now, you don't have to worry about this when you start collecting. Most contemporary stamps are available for only pennies in very fine, unused condition. Most of the more common older stamps are anywhere from 50 cents to a few dollars. Uncommon stamps can be $10 to $100. And from there, the sky's the limit. Should you invest in stamps? That depends. Undoubtedly, it's better to invest in stamps than in Italian shoes like my friend Imelda did. But whether stamps will make a good investment for you requires some examination. Over time, quality stamps have consistently appreciated. During times of high inflation, when the value of tangibles was soaring, stamps were leaders. In normal times, prices increase more slowly. So over time, stamps are a good investment, and the time factor is important. Unlike stocks and bonds, stamps are not traded on an exchange, and there are no standardized prices. If you sell your stamps to a dealer, he'll pay you wholesale, which will be less than you paid for them unless you've held them for quite a while. Auctions can bring higher prices, but they require you to plan well in advance, so you can't liquidate as quickly. And a dealer might not want your stamps for auction unless you have a large collection or some valuable stamps. If you build a collection of good quality stamps and take care in completing sets and seeking rarities, in time you'll have a valuable asset. And beyond the monetary value, you will have had priceless hours of fun and learning, and that's the best investment you can make. Besides, if you're after money, you can collect stamps with money on them. Stamps put you in touch with history, and stamps have actually changed history. In 1900, the U.S. Congress was debating whether to build a canal between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in Panama or Nicaragua. Nicaragua seemed to be the choice until backers of Panama distributed a stamp issued by Nicaragua. It showed a local volcano erupting, and it convinced the Congress that Panama would be a safer choice for the canal. A stamp has even caused a war. When Bolivia issued a stamp in 1930 with a map claiming some territory disputed by Paraguay, Paraguay issued a stamp with their claim to the territory. This was followed by a full-scale war between the two South American countries. And stamp collections have saved lives. At least one man was able to buy his way out of a Nazi concentration camp in Germany with the stamps he had sewn into the lining of his overcoat. Most stamps don't cause wars or sell for $1 million or play the Bhutanese national anthem, but they do bring the world into your home and give you a lifetime of learning, fun, and enjoyment.